Well, good afternoon. It's good to see you guys here, and I hope this is meaningful. I was actually hoping for more people because I think we can have a very frank discussion about what it means to be constitutional or unconstitutional and why constitutions are so important. As many of you may know, I am a plaintiff along with E. Warner Reschke, a representative. My name's Dennis Linthicum, by the
Yeah.
way. Maybe
And
I ought to
Dennis,
back up.
if I
Dennis
can
Linthicum,
interject,
state senator.
I'm sorry, Dennis, I have to interject and do some
Go ahead.
introductory remarks for legal purposes, some of which are promotional purposes. But let me get through those real quick, and maybe more people will sign on while I'm going through these preliminaries. Um, First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone. I'd like to thank you, Senator Linthicum, for joining us. And of course, right now we have Jeanette and Donna who are on, and Rebecca Shearman just came into the waiting room and she's going to be joining us. I expect a few more to join us as we go along. For those who might be here for the first time, this is Western Liberty Network's weekly 1 o'clock Saturday training. It's the purpose of the Western Liberty Network to train grassroots activists how to take responsibility for their own governance and thereby reweave the fabric of our political culture. We are trying to build a limited government farm team by training people to run for local office, showing them how to serve once they get elected, also how to be effective campaign volunteers, and also how to be effective citizen lobbyists. um, Again, this is the Saturday training. We do this every week at 1 o'clock. Uh, Next week will be Tom Cox, who will talk about organizing around local issues. He's a former candidate for governor. The week after that, we will have our annual conference that'll be Zoom streaming live beginning at 9 o'clock. We're limited because of Kate Brown's executive order to 50 people who will be there live, but they will be there live, and we will have a professional Zoomcast person in place. And FreedomWorks is going to advertise it around the country, and other organizations are going to advertise it as well. So I'm really excited about that. I'm not sure if everyone here is signed up for our annual conference, but that is on the 30th. It is at 7 o'clock. I'm going to put on the screen here. Let's see. I'm going to share this. This is a website that will that you can see if you go to westernlibertynetwork.org that talks about the annual conference. The speakers there you see will be Steve Moore, former senior economic advisor to President Trump. He will be participating remotely. Live, we will have Senator Kim Thatcher, myself, Representative Mike Neerman, Tootie Smith, Clackamas County Commissioner and chair of that board, Lulia Zukov of Slavic Vote, Dennis Linthicum, who is speaking to us today, and Greg Burnett, who runs Burnett Media Group, an advertising company, and Tom Cox over there will be participating remotely. As you can see here, you can download a full agenda. If you want to register, you register now. The registration is $75. If you want a room, we have a discounted rate of $149 a night, which includes a hot made-to-order breakfast and includes all taxes. So that is how you participate with that. Now, if you want to review this training or any other training that we do every Saturday, you can do that by going to the training tab on the westernlibertynetwork.org website and scroll down. As you scroll down, you will eventually see where we have the recordings of these Saturday trainings available. Just click on them and you can watch them immediately. Now, for legal purposes, I have to make a disclaimer. Western Liberty Network is a 501c3 organization, and as such, we do not oppose or support any candidates, political parties, legislation, or ballot measures. We don't even support the candidates that we train, but we do train them. And since 2013, 627 people who have received Western Liberty Network training have gotten elected to some local office. A lot of it just below the Willamette Valley in the Cottage Grove, Douglas County area, but also different places throughout the state. And so with that, I introduce a colleague and a friend of mine, Dennis Linthicum. He is a Republican who represents Senate District 28. He's out of Klamath Falls. He has a wife whose name's Diane, and she's just fantastic. He's a grandfather, and Dennis is a graduate of Biola University and the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA. He is a businessman, rancher, irrigator, and a former Clackamas County Commissioner. Now, if I can figure out how to get out of this screen share, we will begin. Here we go, stop share. Okay, I think we're back, so I'll turn the microphone over to you and mute myself, Dennis. Thank you.
Okay, good. It's good to be here. We heard just a slight mistake there from Richard. I'm a former Klamath County commissioner, and Richard said Clackamas County, and it's Klamath County down in Southern Oregon. Senate District 28 includes Jackson County on the east, Klamath County, Lake County, a sliver of Deschutes, and all of Crook County. So it's the second largest Senate district landmass-wise, and maybe cattle-wise, and maybe jackrabbit-wise, et cetera. But it has pretty much the same population as all the other Senate districts. Some Senate districts are growing faster than others, and we will see redistricting happen this year after in the post-census arena. And that will be interesting as that all falls apart or welds together for a superpower for the Democratic legislators that have the majority today. As most of you are aware, today's conversation is about the Constitution. What makes, not Oregon specifically and not the US specifically, but what makes constitutions so important to our form of government? What makes constitutions so important to each of you as individuals? And why the Constitution should matter to all of us. As you may also know, I'm part of a lawsuit that is, I'm a plaintiff, one of 4 different plaintiffs. Representative Mike Neerman is one, myself, Representative E. Werner Reschke, and an individual from Washington County, Neil Ruggles. And the 4 of us have created a lawsuit where we're claiming that the Oregon Constitution has been violated by the legislative process when we, quote, as a legislature, handed all of these emergency powers to the governor, whichever governor that may be. It may have been a Republican governor, it may be Kate Brown as a Democrat governor, it could have been any one of these individuals who are the chief executives of the state. And our claim is that the legislative power is given entirely and vested entirely in the Legislative Assembly. And that's in Article 4, Section 1 of the Oregon Constitution. These legislative powers are in the Legislative Assembly and nowhere else. The governor cannot produce rules, regulations, or legislation. She's got to follow the wishes of the legislative body. Additionally, Article 1, Section 21 of the Oregon Constitution provides, nor shall any law be passed, the taking of effect of which shall depend upon any authority except those provided in this Constitution. And they cannot, it also has in that same article, Section 22, says the operation of these laws shall, quote, never be suspended, close quote. And then there's an except clause a little bit later that says, except by the Legislative Assembly. So Governor Kate Brown does not have the ability to say, you've had the freedom to run your pizza parlor all this time, but I say you no longer have the freedom to run your pizza parlor. That freedom does not belong, that authority does not belong to Kate Brown. That authority belongs to the legislative body. They're the ones who said you could be open till 10 or you had to have 3 sinks in your kitchen or whatever. And they're the ones who draw the power, draw the rules and regulations that you have to abide by. I think the most important aspect of our lawsuit is Article 3, Section 1 says the powers of government shall be divided into 3 separate departments, and they're called departments versus branches as we think of the federal government, but they're the exact same. It continues on: the legislative, the executive, including administrative, and the judicial branch. And then it says, no person charged with the official duties under one of these departments shall exercise any of the functions of another department, except as this Constitution expressly provides. And the important part here is it's not the ORSs that provide the exceptions or express ability of the government, the Kate Brown, the governor, any body or any executive or any commission or anybody else. It's not their wishes that provide the functions, it's the Constitution that provides the authority for these things. So the question I have for you today is, why are constitutions so important? And think about, why do constitutions come first in the lineage of authority? Constitutions are not at the tail end of the authority, they're at the very beginning of the authority, and they're there for a very specific reason. And I'm wondering if any of you would like to contribute your thoughts on why they are there and why they're so fundamentally important to our concept of self-governance.
Yeah,
Anybody have any ideas? Feel free to speak up, unmute.
I'll take a stab at it because I've taken the Hillsdale Constitution 101 class, which is free for anybody. And I'm just doing it to refresh my mind from many years later of being in college and stuff. But we have the Constitution to limit the government on what they can do, because the founding fathers for the federal Constitution did not like, and the federal Constitution goes hand in hand with the Declaration of Independence. So you really have to look at those 2 documents together to really understand what the founding fathers wanted. And so with the federal Constitution, it's to limit the powers of the government to defending us from foreign enemies and domestic, if need be. And I forget the other reason, but there's three reasons, but the main one was to protect us from foreign governments. The state constitutions are developed and they're developed and set after the federal Constitution, because that's the supreme law of the land. No matter what the states do, the federal Constitution has precedence of what's going on. And so the state constitutions are set for the people within that state to follow. And again, it's to limit the government and their powers, and to give the people the power to the consent to be governed. If we do not consent to be governed, which is what we're coming up against right now in not only our country but also in this state of Oregon, then we have the right to find another form of government, which is through the voting process and stuff. And that's why it cracks me up when people say term limits, term limits. Well, we the people have that power to term limit anybody. If we like what they're doing, vote them out. But people don't educate themselves, and they just vote in the incumbents. I vote in the incumbents that do well and are following the constitutions, and I vote out the people who do not. So that's our power. It's given us power.
I would add to that
you raise. Go ahead.
I was going to add to that, less specific to the United States, but more generally for constitutions, it is really difficult to build a society or build an economy or do anything else unless you know what the environment is that you're working with and you have some degree of confidence that terms under which you're building an economy or building a society do not shift, or at least they do not shift arbitrarily. And I think that's why a constitution has to be first or prime, so that you know the environment that you're working with, you know what the limitations are of government, what rights are, those sorts of things. And without a constitution that everyone is grounded in, you have arbitrary law, which is no law at all. It's almost a relative of anarchy.
Right, and the point of at the Jeanette, you made the point, and I think this is important, that the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution go hand in hand. They're the two most important founding documents. And what they both stress is the idea for self-governance to be relevant. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that first of all men are created equal. There's no race, no ethnicity, no national origin, no religious belief. All men are created equal. And they are endowed, they have been given certain unalienable rights. And these unalienable rights are rights that among these are the three that we're most familiar with, that we have the right to life and liberty and our own pursuit, our own just pursuits, our own pursuit of happiness, whatever that may look like, that belongs freely to us to make a choice. So if you think about it, you know, you have certain skills, you've got faculties, you've got, you may have property or facilities or your own car. And if you want to zip around town and give people rides in your automobile, quite frankly, to get them to the airport or the bowling alley, it matters not. You ought to have the freedom to do that. And every time government steps in to regulate your life and your freedom, they're stepping beyond the boundaries of this idea of your unalienable rights belong to you and they can't be separated from you. We don't really know how the founders pronounced this. It could be unalienable, like we all have been taught in grade school, but I actually like the phrase, and the phrase comes from, it can't be alienated from you. It can't be separated from you. It always belongs to you. But I actually like the pronunciation that's unalienable. And alienable property is a property. You may have a lien on your property, on your house, on your car. You owe someone for the you possess the car today, but they have a lien on it, and they could demand the car back as collateral because you failed to make the payments to them for your privilege of driving the car. The same thing for your home. You may have a first lien, your original mortgage. You may have a second lien because you wanted a patio deck out the back door. And what that means is those lenders, those people who loaned you money, have the ability to put a lien, a legal document that takes charge and ownership of your property if you fail to live up to your obligations. And now what we have with a lienable property is property that can be liened, i.e. There's one instance where your college loan can't be liened. It belongs only to the federal government, and nobody else can take a piece of the pie. Nobody else can can have a charge against that. An unalienable property is property that can't be liened. My children are unalienable. Nobody can take from them their lives. Nobody can demand a charge against them. They're just beyond the scope of any legal jurisdiction that we have in that regard. So the fact that these are unalienable rights, they can never be charged, they can never be taken away from us. There's no demand that can be made against these. They belong to us and to us as individuals, and they are part of our rights. And so this includes your skill set, your property, any production, any intelligence that you have, and any knowledge that cunning, artful, ways that you dream up some form of doing A or B or C and going about that. These are all things that belong rightfully to you, and nobody can take those away from you. And this is what makes slavery, our historic, what we think of as historic slavery in the United States of America, that would be an anathema, and was even at the time of the founding. Most people don't realize this, but, just in front of the Constitution, there was a motion made under the Articles of Confederation 2 years before the Constitution was passed. Jefferson describes it in his diary. He says there was a motion to make slavery illegal within the 13 colonies. They were called states at the time, but I'll refer to them as colonies because it's in front of the US Constitution. And what he says, I'll look up the quote here, and what he says is, he says on the 16th of March, 1785, it was moved in Congress to prevent slavery in newly formed states. And it was referred to a committee, somewhat like Oregon's committee system, where the committee listens to it, they hear it, they vote on it, and then they push it onto the floor if it passes out of committee. He says it was accordingly referred by vote, and the proposition was lost. In other words, it never made it out of committee. It got lost in the committee. Jefferson's writes this way. He says, quote, "There were 10 states present. 6 voted unanimously for it and 3 against it, and 1 was divided. It split and there was no meaningful vote cast." He says 7 votes were the requisite to decide the proposition in the affirmation, but we could not get 7. The affirmation was lost. And then he says, and this is the most important part, this is 75 years before the Civil War. This is in 1785. He says, the voice of a single individual in the state that was divided, or in one of the...
Dennis, you just got muted. You left off where you're talking about it 75 years before the Civil War, that they're talking about getting rid of slavery, and then he cut out.
It says the host muted me.
Richard, you're muted. Go ahead, Dennis. I think he was trying to mute someone else and accidentally muted you, would be my guess.
Sorry about that.
I see him nodding.
I was hearing some feedback, and so I muted, but I clicked on the wrong one. My apology, Dennis. My fault. Please go on.
Okay. My point in this narrative is this is a full 75 years before the Civil War. This is in 1785. This is way back at the very beginning, 2 years before the Constitution of the United States was signed. And Jefferson writes in his diary, the voice of a single individual of a state that was divided, or one of those that was in the negative, would have prevented this abominable crime from spreading itself over the new country. Thus, we see the fate of millions of unborn hanging on the tongue of one man, and heaven was silent in that awful moment. But it is to be hoped that it will not always be silent, and that the friends of the rights of human nature will in the end prevail. Now, this is an amazing little piece of history that has long been tossed into the trash can, and we somehow are meant to believe that Jefferson and Washington and all of the founders were just, slaveholders that hated blacks and did not believe in the liberty they espouse in the Declaration of Independence and Constitution. And the opposite is actually true. What they believed in is they believed in the rights of the minority, they believed in self-rule and self-governance, and they believed in these unalienable rights that we've been talking about. And so what we have here is we've got a situation where you could have demanded to get rid of slavery, as the modern anti-fascists or BLM voices are claiming, but they want to do it with coercive power. They want to do it by brute force. They want to do it their way and no other way. And the truth is, if we're going to live in this world where we believe in the ability for each individual to exercise liberty, for each individual to have a heart for doing what's good and moral and righteous, then we should believe in the freedom of each of those people to ferret out what makes values, which supports their value system, and allow them to exercise their conscience on those values. So anytime you get, this is why constitutions are so important. If you do not have a system where we lay out ahead of time all of these rules about what government can and can't do, then you get people who abuse the power of government and start creating government, whether it's subsidies or whether it's trade barriers or whether it's monopolies within a marketplace. All of these things are laws created by legislators, lawmakers, and executed by the executive, the governor, and all of them are in violation of the basic principles of the federal Constitution. At some point, as conservatives, as people who want to conserve traditional values and uphold the individual rights and liberties of every individual, we need to be willing to talk about constitutionality and how important these ideas are. If we let these fall by the wayside, we're all in deep yogurt, because freedom is what it is. I mean, freedom doesn't change, it doesn't mutate, it doesn't evolve over time. And if it does go anywhere, it will, transition or evolve into liberty, where one group of powerful people start initiating a response or an appetite for taking the liberties and feeding and growing off of their tax dollars and their lack of understanding, or their Twitter-pated responses, which are too shallow to get to the depth of any of the issues that are most important. This is why this little piece of history with regard to Jefferson is never discussed. It's never talked about. So we tear his statue down and we paint these vulgarities all over it, like somehow that's more moral and that's more righteous and that's better than the words that he penned in his diary on a day where he says millions of unborn will be harmed by this action that we have lacked the courage to tackle today. And basically, Jefferson was willing to be that voice for sound truth, logic, reason, for principle. And you and I need to be those voices in today's world. You and I have to be willing to step up and be the voice for sound reason, for valid data. Look at the governor's policies today about coronavirus. She's totally abusing what we would consider a valid use of data. She says, we're going to follow the science. And that's really just blather, because they're not using the science in any legitimate fashion whatsoever. What they're doing is taking advantage of people who have been bullied into submission. And anytime you have a government that is willing to bully the citizens on Main Street, you have a government that's overstepped its bounds. And this is why our understanding of our founders in the Constitution is one of the most important aspects of the governance model that we can understand. I'll put a link. Where's the chat window here? Let me put a link up in the chat window. I see all kinds of people saying stuff. I've not been paying attention to it. I'm not sure if any of those are questions for me, but here's a link. I would like you all to follow this. It's a PDF copy, it's an audio copy, it's an HTML copy, it's an EPUB copy. Grab the audio copy of Frederick Bastiat's The Law. This Bastiat's copy of The Law is one of the best books that you can get to see how artful politicians will abuse their power to gain control over the population. And Bastiat wrote this in 1850, again, a full 11 years before the Civil War. And he understood that the United States was the only place on the planet where a person's private life, their liberty, and their property could be fully exercised. And this book is only 90 pages. In my office, I give it away freely to people who visit my office. I also recommend you listen to the audiobook. It takes about 90 minutes. It's an easy listen. He boils it down. He makes it so succinct and easy to understand. Your high schoolers could understand it. You guys can all understand it. And it is a fantastic view into the corruption that comes from concentrated power. If you think about it, we have long known that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's an easy phrase to know. Everyone's aware of it. It comes from Edmund Burke, not Richard Burke. It comes from Edmund Burke, also in the founding era, but he was in England. And it is just a beautiful synopsis of the problem we see today. The federal government was created with judiciary, with legislative, with executive power. And those aren't just three powers that get to have at the carcass of the human body that exists within their political sphere. That was so that those individual branches would compete with each other so that no one branch got too much power. What we see today in Oregon is the House is Democrat a majority. The Senate is Democrat majority. The judges have been appointed by Democrats for 30 years. The governor has been a Democrat for 30 years. And on it goes. And what we see is concentrated power where the government has engineered all of the resources of the taxpaying public and focus them for improving and promoting their power versus promoting the true value and needs of the constituents. And so that's really where we find ourselves. And that's why these concepts that Bastiat highlights in an hour and a half, you can read it. Next time you drive from Salem to Portland, you can do one half of the book. And when you turn around to go back home or the other way around, you can do the other half of the book. And I recommend to do it 3 or 4 times before the month's out and get this information solid into your head. and solid into your brain so that you understand these basic concepts and fall in love with them in the same way he was in love with the founder's vision for the United States of America. It is just great information for you to get a hold of and read. And then what makes this so important is if we know that absolute power corrupts absolutely, then we can see the need for breaking power into smaller jurisdictions. So the 50 states are again breaking that power, and that some senators get elected in 2 years from now and some get elected 4 years from now and they serve 4-year terms, is also meant to break that power and distribute that power across bodies. And then representatives are 2 years and 2 years and 2 years and 2 years, so that there's this constant distribution across the body politic. Except when you now have this philosophical or ideological construct that leans towards tyranny and leans toward totalitarian control by government, now all of a sudden you're left with a whole slew of representatives that are stepping into government for the sheer purpose of exercising unauthorized power based on this constitutional construct. And then here's how deep it goes and how much America used to believe in that is think about the idea of innocent until proven guilty. This, believe it or not, is the same concept. Let's see, I lost the concept in my brain here. The concept that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. This is why we claim you're innocent until proven guilty. Not because we believe everybody is innocent. With a biblical worldview that our founders had, they said man is fallen, therefore we should not give him an overabundance of power. We should restrict his power. We should break up his power into as many different domains as possible. We've got the state, we've got counties, we've got municipalities, we've got unchartered cities. All of these are opportunities for breaking the construct of one rule from on high. And that's why we say innocent until proven guilty, because what the founders realized is anybody in power could convict anybody they wanted for treason or for some other crime or for some heinous sexual perversion. They could do it at will and they would not have to produce the evidence. This is what we face today. Instead of producing evidence, we just claim you're a homophobe or a transphobe or a racist or you're xenophobic or you're a misogynist or none of it has to get proven. And why not? Aren't we all innocent until proven guilty? No, because we've shelved the idea that absolute power corrupts absolutely. Therefore, those who are powerful can exercise whatever judicial procedure they want. They can impeach Trump on nothing. They can impeach Trump because he had a phone call with Ukrainian prime minister. They can impeach Trump for any number of reasons. None of them have to be valid. None of them have to be significant. None of them have to, and on it goes. And this is what we come to when we come to a point where we've fallen for the propaganda and everybody now believes the authority for running your life and my life comes from the state instead of from God, who has endowed us with these self-evident rights. So it's really, really important for us to understand the basics that are in our founding fathers' documents, in their understanding, in their writing. And I will let me jump out to one more place. This is an important place for you to go. And this is the Liberty Fund. The Liberty Fund has an online library of all the founders' documents, as well as great documents for great documents from around the world, anywhere in the world, that you think you might want to look up something that Samuel Adams said, or you might want to look up something that that Thomas Jefferson said, or you might want to look up something that Martin Luther King said. This is the place to go to get all these things. Let me paste this into the chat window. And the Online Library of Liberty, these are all HTML documents. There are PDF documents. There are hardbound versions of all these documents as well. And this is a fabulous place to get all of these materials, and I recommend it wholeheartedly. There is so much information there. It'll probably take you 10 years to read it all, and it's well worth visiting this website. You know, there are these things, you know, like where we see words getting changed in the media format. Twitter can ban somebody because they didn't like what they said. It violated their policy, et cetera, et cetera. And Samuel Adams in 1785 said, isn't it interesting how the tyrant can change the meaning of words at whim? And that's exactly what we see today. We see people changing the meaning of words and now exercising untold aspects of power and, quite frankly, corruption, because absolute power corrupts absolutely. And you can't escape these things. And so it's really important to know what these things are, what they look like, and the online. Go ahead and click on that, Richard. And here's where you get to the Online Liberty of Books. And this information is just fabulous. You're interested in the founders or historical documents, this is the place to go. It's a collection of all the scholarly works, why liberty matters, why it's important, famous quotations about liberty, and the collection, Images of Liberty and Power, the best of the Online Liberty series, all the way down to Percy Shelley and his thoughts on liberty, you see here on this page. These are all just things that are fabulous, fabulous reads. There must be, Richard, while you're looking at this, go to titles or go to you know, just books or articles. There'll be authors or something like this, and you'll see hundreds of authors that you'll know and be familiar with. Click back on the home button up here, right here. I feel like I should be able to click in here, but Richard's the one running the mouse and the screen.
I can give you control.
Over here on the far right.
Let me give you control of the screen, Dennis. You can.
Okay.
You can share your screen. You can go ahead. I think you can share your screen right now.
Where's the share screen button? Share screen.
That should be at the bottom.
The
bottom of your Zoom meeting window.
Yeah, I got it.
I'm still learning this too.
Host has disabled.
Oh. Try it now. Give it another shot, Dennis. Like I say, I'm still learning how to do this myself. Is it working for you, Dennis? Here we go. Hold on.
Yeah, Yeah, it says Zoom won't be able to do it until I quit and start over. So I'll just let you drive for a second. What I
All
was
right.
going to say is go.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't think about sharing this.
I don't see a home screen. Titles, people, collections.
Under collections, you should see the founders. Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't think about sharing this. Let me send you here's what I'm looking for. Put this into your browser.
Okay.
And everybody else, you guys can click on that also.
Is that what you're looking for, Dennis?
Yeah, and this is just a series of, you know, their books on the founding, you know, everything from de Tocqueville and political writing during the founding, coming from all sorts of different areas, you know, the American Republic, and just filled with little factoids like what I just read you from Jefferson, and they're all included here. And under their authorship page, you see this is John Taylor of Caroline and the collected works of Jane Wilson. All of these individuals who brought an enormous wealth of information into the founding arena. And the public, our high school kids, you and I know very little about these documents and how the presidency was created, or this one actually that just came up at the bottom of the screen, The Crisis by Neil York. This is a fabulous read because it comes from England, and it's people in England who support the American Revolution and their thoughts on it. And so it's really an enjoyable read, and their language and their understanding is fabulous for you, I, and our high school kids and our college students to get a handle on and learn how to navigate in these very profound ideas that have great influence on where we go from here, because that's really the question in most of our minds, is where do we go from here? The Constitution and the Declaration are the two items that we need to think about. Hey, look at this, 40% off, you know. Anyway, I'll let you guys poke around in those libraries and look at things at your own time. Richard, let me share my email with everybody here. I'll put it into the chat window also.
Okay.
And if you have questions, or you would like some other items, or you would like a presentation at your church, I have a master's degree from Biola in Christian apologetics and the theology behind, there's science and there's religion on one side, and we always think those are competing, and there's the philosophical understanding in the middle. And my apologetics degree is a master's in how do you marry the religious perspective to the scientific perspective, and what is the ideological bridge between those two areas that seem opposed to each other. In essence, they're not at all opposed, and they support one another in full and frank discussions. But getting truth onto the field of battle is the hard part. John Milton wrote, we've never known truth to fail, ever. We have never known truth to fail. And he says, as long as truth is allowed onto the battlefield, truth will always prevail. And then he asks the question, what if truth is kept off the field of play? And that's really what we face here. What if Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, the big tech giants that have been created by the federal government, what if those guys are able to keep truth off of the field? What are we left with? We're left with deceit, we're left with corruption, we're left with abuses of every variety and sort. And it's a real serious question from John Milton, quote, way back when. And so we have to become more learned in our understanding of our American history and why it becomes so important for each of us to understand these founding ideals and principles and not let all I'll call it, short-sighted, unreasonable, and fallacious arguments that show up in every crazy and vulgar meme in the internet space sway you from your conviction about truth and knowledge and these traditional values that you ought to hold very dear to your heart and your family's heart as you try and raise your kids and unify your family and the public around these issues at large. So we're getting close to the end here. Anybody have any thoughts, something they'd like to say, something? You can write me offline. I've given you my email address and I look forward to hearing you, but anything you want to pitch in right now while we've still got a couple minutes.
Sure, just unmute your microphone if you want to talk. When you're done talking, remute your microphone so that we don't have feedback issues. But anyone who wants to chime in, ask a question, or make a comment, now's the time.
Dennis, I just want to say thank you so much, because everything that you have said is exactly what I have been restudying over the last several months. And so my question to you is, with everything you presented and what is supposed to be taught in the schools, which is not, we have more of this, and the problem is we have the 1619 project and other things being taught in the schools that are going to strip away what we know of, which is much more un-American indoctrination of our children. What can be done in the legislature, which is controlled by the Democrats right now, to try and stop some of this stuff? And would some of the Democrats come over to the more conservative view to preserve these founding principles and morals and values?
Well, yeah, you ask a good question. It's a tough question and very relevant. Is how do we, and it has to take place through each of us, through those of us who are here, through our relationships, through our groups, through our business relationships or fraternal relationships, or people that you know from your church community. Those people have to recognize the value and importance of being endowed by our Creator. It's a creator versus an atheistic worldview, quite frankly, because you have to have some ground you're going to stand on, and your feet can't be firmly planted in midair because you're not standing on anything firm. You need to be able to stand on the rock or something. That the language used in the New Testament and Old Testament is fabulous language. without even getting overtly, religious, these principles are valid. You have to have somewhere to stand. And if you're just standing on the moment, Black Lives Matter more than brown lives, it doesn't make any sense. How can we how can we not avoid realizing that all the people who came from Vietnam 20 years ago into the United States of America after the Vietnam War, which was a tragedy in its own right, but those people came to the United States of America looking for freedom. They did not come here because we're systematically racist. Neither did the Ecuadorians, the Thailanders, the people who came from the Ukraine, or the people who came from Hungary, or the people who came from Poland, or the Italians, or the Canadians. Anybody who has a U.S. citizenship paper today, has a job in the United States. They did not flood into the United States because we are this horrid nation. They came here because of these founding documents and the stories they've heard about success and the stories they've heard about freedom. And only now have we twisted that to be upside down to the point where we say male and female relationships and mothers and fathers and nephews and nieces and aunts and uncles are verboten because we don't believe in gender or sex or biological sex. And at some point, this is just silliness, and we've got to be willing to say it's silliness to no longer believe in male and female. I don't know where you go with that, other than you have to be willing to stand up and tell your school district, your local, you're running for a school board in the next year or so. That school board position is a powerful place to voice traditional ideas and to voice these ideas so that other people see a leader who's not ashamed or afraid to say, I'm sorry, I believe in male and female. We see millions of people, billions of people on planet Earth who are male and female, and the left expects you and I to detonate that like a pound of dynamite. It's just insanity, and we've got to be willing to stand for these basic truths.
Yeah, and I get that. I have a backbone. I'm used to having a target on my back. I was in education for 25-ish years, and I'm used to putting a target on my back. But to try and get people to realize that our rights are going left and right because of the things that they vote in, or because they won't stand on their own morals and values, and then they're like, what's happening? It's very difficult, and that's why I have these small meetings at my house or at another person's house in my group to try and keep people educated and active and involved. And they're small. I wish they were much larger.
Right. And I think that's the idea of traditional values, to throw out all the traditional values, the nuclear family and whatever, is really ultimately destructive, because that's the most powerful self-governing unit on the face of the earth, and it always has been. And as soon as the state can interject itself into the place of motherhood and fatherhood, this is why Kate Brown wants 0 to 20 education, is because if she actually starts educating your children from 3 months, 0, through 20 years old, she's got their mind in the palm of her hand and can manipulate them in any way she pleases. And, quite frankly, I use Kate Brown as a Democrat, but we could We could make it, you know, Dennis Linthicum as a Republican. You should never give that much responsibility to anybody, right? Because that responsibility belongs to parents, and it's a sole right of parents, and parents should have the unique authority to raise their children as they see fit within their ethnic heritage, within their religious heritage, within their family construct, within their traditional values. That belongs to them, and it does not belong to the state. And anytime anybody is picking that out of your pocket and placing it into their own pocket, they're violating these constructs that we see so self-evidently clear in the Declaration of Independence. And, you know, your life and your liberty and your own just pursuits belong to you, and they don't belong to anybody else. And we've got to prevent the state from, you know, continuing to eat away at these basic rights, because as soon as you eat away at that foundation, the whole thing crumbles.
So with you saying that, Dennis, I 100% agree with you. Can you give us a little bit of recap on the Senate Bill 254 that's going to remove parents' rights in regards to immunizations? And if your child's not fully immunized, your child may not attend school or sports.
Yes, I'm very concerned about that too.
Right. Well, yeah, everybody ought to be concerned about it, but more concerning even than that is now once your children are at the school, what are they being taught? What are they being taught with regard to these values? What are they being taught with regard to these traditional constructs? What are they being taught with regard to manhood and womanhood and husbands and wives and the family unit and the history of the United States? Are they ever being taught about the diary entry from Jefferson in 1785? What are the things that are being purposely hid from them by the leftists in charge of the state school system? Maybe homeschooling is the best option. And right now, we've got a heck of a battle in front of us with 254. I would suggest letter writing campaigns. I would suggest phone calls. I would suggest knocking on the door of every representative, not just the one for your district or the senator for your district. I would recommend getting in contact, writing letters to the editor, write 3 letters every week, get 3 people, get your group of 5 moms, have one send a letter every week to every local newsprint that you can try and get an edge into the news media. Try and influence people in your neighborhood, have get-togethers. You know, with the COVID restrictions, they're going absolutely nuts. You can't even have someone over for a cup of coffee without, you know, getting a permission slip from the governor's office. At some point, you have to ask yourself, when is too much too much? And it's gone way too far. We're really deep into this vat of yogurt, and we're going to drown. Even though it sounds so sweet and peaceful, it's not in our best interest.
So I'm just curious, since the bill that was similar to 254 was killed with the Republicans walking out last session, would that be a possibility this session as well? Because with the supermajority, we're looking at this passing.
Yeah, that's right. In the walkout, in the long session, the walkout becomes very difficult. We were able to do it in 2019 because the cap and trade bill was held off to the very end. And so it was easy to walk out because there's nothing left to do. We passed all the other bills that were important. There were a handful of budget bills that we Republicans came back on a Saturday to pass through. And so that worked out well from a calendar perspective. We don't control the calendar. And we're on the wrong end of the argument when it comes to fulfilling our responsibilities and our duties. If the public doesn't stand up for us when we walk again, we're really going to be out in left field, because the media You've seen what the media has done to any conservative voice, aside from deplatforming them or canceling them or pretending they didn't ever exist. Think about how far this has gone. We used to hear that be careful what you say because there'll always be a record of it. Okay, now tell me what happened to Trump. Do you think you can find a record of any of his tweets on Twitter? Do you think you can go find a record of what he said March 3rd of 2017? Do you think you can find a record of any of the history of President Trump and the good things he accomplished? No, no, and no. They tried to deplatform Ron Paul, for Pete's sakes, who's a pacifist and a libertarian, hero to most of America, and yet they took him down. Oh, and then they tell us, oh, that was a mistake, we're sorry, and they put it back up. At some point, the public is going to wake up and say their entire future is on the line, and they had better wake up and get accustomed to talking in the narrative that says we've got to stand for the traditional values, principles of our founding fathers, and I will not abide by anybody calling them racist and haters, because they were not racist and they were not haters. And you can prove it by walking down Main Street of any street in Oregon. You will see a taco shop, a hamburger shop, a Thai food place. You will see Chinese food. You will see Mexican food. You'll even see something like Vietnamese food or Ecuadorian cuisine. You'll see stuff from every nation on planet Earth on Main Street. How is it that in America, you can have Vietnamese Americans and Ecuadorian Americans, you can have someone from Vietnam or Ecuador or Peru or Yugoslavia or Hungary or the Ukraine? How can these people come to the United States and claim, after a couple of years, I'm proud to be an American? They can only claim that because of the free market and system that we have for self-governance. Do any of you think you can go to Beijing or Mumbai and say, I'm Chinese, and get away with it? Would anybody in Mumbai believe you even if you said, I'm Indian? Very well, I'm Indian. And I'm not making fun of the Indian accents. I'm simply saying the United States of America is the most important, most free, most self-governed and self-regulated country on the planet. And that's the beauty of it. Somebody from Peru, somebody from Ecuador, somebody from Argentina, somebody from Russia can come to the United States and make the claim, I am an American and I'm proud to be a citizen of the United States of America. That does not happen in any other country on the planet. And so we have to simply stop the left from beating us up for our openness. And right now they're taking our openness and they're subverting the American principles. We went through it earlier. When you can no longer say innocent until proven guilty is a construct of the United States, you're in deep, deep trouble. And the reason you can no longer say innocent until proven guilty is because we apparently don't believe in evidentiary fact anymore. We don't believe in the truth as such. We only believe in the narrative. And the most important truth you can gain hold of today is the idea that facts bear witness to reality, and we've got to live in the real world. We cannot live in the make-believe. And so, all of these things run together. It's like we're in a mixing bowl of bad philosophy, and somebody turned the beaters on high, and we're just getting whipped around in here. But at some point, we're going to have to stop this endless charade of caring about certain populations or peoples while disdaining, hating, and canceling all the other segments of the population that we disagree with. This isn't the way America was founded. This isn't what we believe in. This isn't how we should be standing for the future of our children and our grandchildren and our own families' lives and prosperity.
Okay, before we go, I would like to
Any other thoughts, and we'll call it a day.
Yeah, I would like to thank Dennis for his time. His time is very valuable, especially now at the beginning of session. And I think that although Western Liberty Network typically trains on specific skills, I think it is very important for us to sort of keep our eye on the ball and stay grounded in the basic constitutional principles that our skills are meant to be applied to and are, you know, used and fundamental to advancing our constitutional values. I want to make sure that everyone on the call today has had a chance to chime in with a question or a comment. So I'm going to give one more shot at that. I'll unmute everybody, and if you want to chime in, please do. And if not, then we will call it a day with best wishes to all. God bless. And hopefully we'll see you next week when we'll have Tom Cox talk to us, a former gubernatorial nominee, about organizing around local issues. Go ahead.
I have a question. How soon do we need to be concerned about the vaccine mandate bill possibly passing in the session?
You have to be concerned right now because they don't need any Republicans' votes to pass it. So that means, you know, talking to me or talking to Chuck Thompson it isn't going to hack, you know, the system. What you need to do is convince the left that this is just a reach too far. If we give the talking point for vaccine, let's pretend vaccines are good. Okay, they're good, but this is still too far. This is still a violation of the Nuremberg trials. This is still a violation of you using your state authority to abuse me and treat me like a guinea pig. And this is against, that's the foundational idea. We've got these foundational principles that we're standing on. Your life belongs to you. That means control of your life belongs to you. Your children belong to you. Your children do not belong to the state. And so these are the foundational principles that we have to argue for again and again and again and again, because these are the principles that have been missing from our children's curriculum. The high school and college age students that are graduating today and voting for the totalitarians on the left, they don't know that these principles are an anathema to every free-thinking individual on the planet. And they somehow think majority rule is going to save the planet or save the day, and it's just not true. So right now, you have to be serious about your concern. Talk to every Democrat senator, every Democrat House member, every Democrat who's got a handle on this bill, thinking it will solve all of our problems. And some of their attitudes are just malicious. One of the items that came across my desk today was a bill, House Bill 2238, which says, which modifies 401.188 and says, owner of property that is used, even if only temporary, under this section of the emergency rules that the governor's operating under, even if the owner may, the owner is entitled to no compensation except as the owner may prove entitlement compensation under Article 1, Section 18 of the Oregon Constitution. And they say that what the text that they add in is after control, redistricting, re-regulating by rationing, freezing, use of quota, prohibition on shipments, price fixing, allocations, or other means on the use and sale of food, feed, fuel, clothing, and other commodities, materials, goods, and services. And after they document the prescribing of direct activities in connection with use, conservation, salvage, prevention, on and on it goes, then they say, or in bold letters, including through the seizure or use or possession of any real or personal property that may be necessary for the management of resources in the emergency. And what that means is not only your home, not only your business, but your car and your firearm and your bicycle, all of these things fall under the jurisdiction of this. And this is malicious. This has got nothing to do with public safety. This has got nothing to do with creating an environment where you and I can interact freely and use our property, our goods, and our services. They could take your house and give it to someone else because they thought, and they can weave words like nobody's business, they can take that seizure and possession of any real property or personal property for the necessary management of resources during an emergency. Actually, it says following an emergency. So this is just malicious. And it's about time the public woke up to the fact that we have a malicious set of self-serving bureaucrats in power, and we need to stop them, and we need to stop them now.
Someone sent a message about, or asking you which Democratic lawmakers you think might be approachable, if any.
Yeah, I'm probably not a good, I probably don't have a good feel for that. I had a better feel for that, you know, with the guys that I already knew and had relationships with, you know, like Arnie Roblin was an individual. I thought, you know, he seemed pretty reasonable. Actually, Mona Sanderson seemed reasonable, but the power of politics is what we face. Each of these individuals may, quote, seem reasonable, but what does the hierarchy look like? And what does the threat to their serving on this committee or that committee look like? I'm no longer on the health committee because a couple of months back, I gave the OHA director, Patrick Allen, a tough time in a committee meeting online. You've probably seen the little interchange between us, and he ends up telling me he's sorry I disagree with his analysis and perspective. Well, that really, I didn't really hold him accountable, but notice today I'm no longer vice chair of the health committee, and this is purely political. It's got nothing to do, it doesn't mean I was right, it doesn't mean I was wrong, it means the people who are in power would rather silence me, cut off my tongue, rather than hear the bold words I have to say. And so when we're in this kind of environment, how that impacts the Democrats and how they respond to your communique is anybody's guess.
What committees are you on this round, Dennis?
I'm on Judiciary, Housing, and Veterans and Emergency Administration.
Any other questions for Dennis today? Okay, I don't see any, and we're a little bit over time. I want to thank Dennis for staying a few extra minutes. I heard somebody there. Did somebody have something to say? So I guess not. So anyway, check out westernlibertynetwork.org for information about the conference to take place on the 30th. Dennis Linthicum will be speaking there as well. along with all the other people indicated on that webpage. This recording by the end of next week will be on the training tab of the westernlibertynetwork.org website. Just scroll down, and a couple of people here came in late, so if you want to see the rest of it, and it's definitely worth viewing, please look at it then. Until then, I thank all of you, and I wish you all a wonderful weekend. God bless.